Hello and welcome to the Wildcard edition of the Monster Pod here presented by The Lines, Lines.com. Matt Brown, Mo Nuwwarah coming to you, breaking down each and every one of the games. What do we like? What do we hate? What do these props look like? Everything we can try to get you a bet in your account, hopefully, before we leave this podcast. Mo, coming into the playoffs here. I mean, this is... I don't know if there's a ton that you took from week 18. I really didn't take much at all. I mean, we had some teams punt. We had some teams where when the motivation shifted, they kind of turned it on and did whatever. There wasn't a lot for me that I took from week 18. What say you?
Just some money.
Yeah.
Week 18 was good for me. Week 18 has historically been my best week. I think there's generally just a lot of value in week 18 because of the stuff we talked about, people overly buying into certain things, the market overly baking in certain motivations, and just stuff that's not present in any other week, basically. So I'm always happy when week 18 is here, but unfortunately it only comes around once a year.
Yeah, off we go to the playoffs here. Guys, a reminder, everything we do absolutely free. So if you're listening on the audio side, if you want to subscribe, rate, review, we do appreciate that a ton. And of course, on the YouTube side, hit that subscribe button down below. Give us a little thumbs up if you don't mind, and help people find this video. Help us continue to grow this channel, because again, everything on this channel outside of it, the stuff that me and Mo do, absolutely free as well. All sports all year long. Los Angeles Chargers on the road at the Houston Texans. As we sit right now, it is 3 across the board, unless you're here in Las Vegas where you can get the 2.5 at South Point. 42.5 is our total. And Mo, this was something I started talking about with you 6 weeks ago, where I was like, man, I can't wait to get to the playoffs and bet against Houston and whatever. And I can't wait to the playoffs and bet against the Chargers, because I didn't believe in the Chargers. And here they are. Of course, they're matched up. So I can't hate on both of these teams. But, you know, I can't help but get away from one of the things that you've said here over the last month of the pod, which is about this Chargers team, which is just kind of a team that goes in and on underperforming teams that are a little bit weaker, they tend to, with the coaching advantage, the quarterback play, just kind of beat up on those teams. And I can't seem to get away from that here in this one. Can't wait to see what you think about it. From an injury standpoint, Josh Palmer is out for the Chargers on a questionable side of things. Quarterback Eli Apple, running back J.K. Dobbins, wide receiver Quentin Johnston, linebacker Denzel Perryman, and their right guard Trey Pipkins, all listed as questionable on the Texans side. Right guard Shaq Mason is actually out, so they will be down an offensive lineman for sure, an offensive line that was already bad to begin with. Questionable defensive end Danico Autry. Wide receiver John Mechie, that matters only because of the depth that they have at the wide receiver position. Then linebacker Christian Harris, also questionable for them. So this open 2.5, we see now that this has flipped to 3, so some Charger support has come in.
Yeah, it took all week. Somebody likes the Chargers, I guess. I do not, unfortunately. I hate it, but I did take the Texans, +3. -115, you can get better now. I think I saw there's a -112 on DK. I took some money line +136. I'm seeing as high as 140 now on Bet365. I just can't get the Texans to this big of an underdog. I mean, I do think the Chargers are better. I think the Chargers probably should be small favorites. I can't get them past like 1.5 here, though. I mean, they're still facing an elite defense. Like you said, something all year this Chargers team has done is just beat the piss out of these really bad teams. I don't put the Texans in that category. They're probably on a similar level to the Falcons. The Falcons outplayed the Chargers pretty convincingly, but Kirk Cousins single-handedly threw the game away with pick sixes. The Falcons are a bit weaker than Houston by DVOA, but in the same ballpark. They're 20th, Houston's 16th. I don't really see the Chargers. Well, what have they shown us that they should be -3 on the road against a playoff team? I just can't get to this big of a number here. I mean, yeah, better coach and a better quarterback. That obviously holds a lot of weight, but I think that's being baked in here when they're -3 on the road. I think a fun prop for this one, which is a player that popped up into their roster and last week played is Deontay Johnson. He, I think, might move the needle. He's easily their second most talented receiver. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not even close. It's like he's their only other receiver besides Nico that's probably above replacement level. They threw him in there with the first team offense. He was in their very first drive. He had 4 targets, 2 catches. He played like 40% of the snaps. I think he's going to actually play a role in this game. FanDuel is quite a bit off the rest of the market on his anytime touchdown odds. They are hanging 11-1. I mean, you just can't get starting receivers for that kind of price. So if you want an anytime touchdown punt, I think that one's pretty good.
Yeah, so I said I have access to. So if you guys don't know, if you never lived in Vegas or been to Vegas a ton, so one of the unique things about specifically the South Point is they don't juice lines. And so basically you are always going to have a 110 line. And so they are either the first or the last to move lines because it is a deal where they'll hold on because the 2.5s never turn into 120s or whatever. And all it's just, it goes from 2.5 to 3. It goes from 3 to 2.5 or whatever it might be. And so I actually did take a little of the 2.5 here on the Chargers. And I can't get past the fact that if Houston doesn't get a lead in this game, and if they are playing from behind, I have absolutely no confidence in this team at all to come and play in chase mode. And mainly because of how poor the offensive line has been. We talk about the regression for CJ Stroud, and certainly there has been this year, but he played at just such an incredibly high level as a rookie. It probably was unsustainable anyway. He's probably actually somewhere between where he was last year and where he is this year. It's probably where he'll settle in the grand scheme of things. But you talk about him regressing just a tad, but I think a lot of that too just has the fact this offensive line has really let him down so far this year. And so if they get into a spot in which this Chargers team is up and then you basically have to go into throw mode, I don't have a ton of confidence in them to be able to do that and for Stroud to have enough time to actually execute that on an efficient basis in all of this. And look, I hate both of these teams. I can't believe I even put in a bet on the Chargers here when it came down to it. But I do think that there are some inherent advantages, obviously on the quarterback side of things, obviously on the coaching side of things. And then I do think, Nico Collins, by the way, just like weirdly enough, has not been all that efficient since he's come back. It's like I think he's a true number 1 when there's a true number 2, and I think that helps him out a ton. You have the Chargers to play a bunch of too high. He has actually been way worse against too high over the course of this season as well. So I think that might be able to limit his production a tad. So I did play some 2.5 here on the Chargers. One of the other things I looked at too, and I want to get your opinion, is just so Ladd McConkey, right? Like we've got there's no Josh Palmer. Quentin Johnston's banged up. The Texans are really good against the run. It seems to me like Herbert might get, a little bit more pass happy in this one, just as far as path of least resistance type stuff goes. And you're looking at a dude that has had to de facto become the number 1 there, even though I'm sure they wished he didn't have to be the number 1. But we're looking at like 12, 7, 6, 10, 8 targets over his last 5 games. He's reached at least 83 receiving yards in 6 of his last 7 games as well. And so his receiving prop is set at 73.5. And so I don't know. I think that there's a decent chance that he's able to get there basically just on volume. It wouldn't surprise me to see another 10-12 type target game and him being relied on really heavily to move the ball.
I like these Texans corners. So I think I think that honestly is a bit on the higher side, but yeah, I also depends on Quentin. I mean, if Quentin is turning into a pumpkin, then I don't think Herbert's going to look his way again if he has any early flubs. The Texans also play quite a bit of zone. I mean, everyone does, obviously, but they're a little bit on the heavier zone side, I think. So that has been a little more effective limiting McConkey. He's like elite against man. So we'll see what the Texans come up with as a plan here. But, yeah, I think the market is generally expecting not a ton of scoring. There has been some under movement here. I think that plays into the Texans' favor as well because, like you said, if this becomes any sort of shootout, I don't see how the Texans can keep up with Justin Herbert. So I think they need a lower scoring game. I think they'll get a lower scoring game. I trust this defense, and I think that's maybe the only really good unit on the field in this game. I don't know if the Chargers actually have a really good defense. I mean, the numbers love them. Not as much as Houston, but they like them. But the level of competition has been very low for what the Chargers have faced this year. So when they have faced some of the tougher offenses, they've struggled. So I don't actually know if this is a good defense or not.
Yeah, it is definitely a fascinating game here against two teams that I hate, and so I don't like it's going to be a hate watch for me. I'll certainly be watching it, but teams that I do not think have a snowball's chance in hell of advancing once they get past this round when it all comes down to it. Just not teams that I like to really invest in here whenever I look at it, and I'm digging for ways of success, and that's kind of what I'm doing with both of these teams. Steelers and the Ravens. Matt Brown, Mo Nuwwarah coming to you here for the lines. As we sit right now, this thing 9.5, 10. There is a flat 9 at Fanatics. So if you're looking to back the Ravens, there's 1-9 left in the market out there, but as high as 10 elsewhere. 43.5. The prevailing total here in this one. Mo, this thing opened at 8.5. I was live on air when it opened at 8.5, and I was like, hey, if you're trying to get this in a teaser, you better do this in like the next half hour because this is not going to stay in this range. And sure enough, by the time I was off air, it had gotten out of that 8.5 range, gotten into 9.5 already. People starting to flood money in there on the Ravens. What do you think here as the Steelers head on the road to Baltimore?
I mean, I think this one seems pretty fair on the side. I always thought the Ravens were undervalued in the prior matchups. I bet them both times. Mixed results, obviously. I do wonder about the over, though. I was looking at that pretty hard. That's probably the closest thing to a bet that I have not pulled the trigger on at this point. I mean, the Ravens have just been such an over team. Third highest team total over rate, sixth highest team total over margin, according to what Cleve TA posted on Twitter. So I think that tracks with what we've seen all year. This team was scoring in the 40s pretty much at will for a lot of the season. And you have a Steelers team that they want to run the ball, but will they have that option in this game? I don't know. I mean, you know what the line is. You know what ends up happening when the Steelers are playing from behind. The Russ Moon balls are either going to be chunk plays or quick 3-and-outs. You have a Ravens team, though, that has improved on defense. I don't know how much of that is real. It's been getting a lot of air time for sure lately. Statistically, they've been very good the second half of the season. I don't know how much I trust it. I think the first half schedule was including a lot more tough offenses for them. The Chiefs, the Bills, the Bengals. And the second half, you know, they're facing the Browns. They're facing some of their weaker opponents. We know that that defensive stats are often a product of the offenses you face. So maybe things got a lot easier. Maybe it's a combination. I guess likely it's a combination. I do somewhat worry about these injuries too. I mean,
yeah,
Zay
Flowers is out. Yeah, that we should mention that.
Yeah,
Sorry about off the top. Ravens, Zay Flowers out on the Steelers side. Really pretty healthy actually. Right guard Mason McCormick is questionable, but that's about it on their side of things.
Well, I don't know what's going on with their kicker as well here. I mean, Chris Boswell. I don't want to put any stock into a kicker really, but he's probably the best kicker in the NFL. I mean, top 3 for sure. So that might actually matter. It is. I think everyone just maybe artificially deflating this. Cold AFC North teams traditionally play a lot of lower scoring games, but I just don't know if that fits this year, man. I do think taking away Zay Flowers, obviously, like that might be the only player in this pass catching core that is ever keeping a defensive coordinator up at night. Like, I know Mark Andrews has recovered somewhat and looked closer to his old self. He's obviously a monster in the red zone. I don't know that he's that big of a weapon between the 20s. I don't even know if Zay Flowers keeps anybody up at night, but he's better, more talented, more threatening than all these other guys. So those are kind of what's keeping me off it right now. But I am eyeing the total for anybody who maybe, in case the line moves, it's sitting 43.5 right now. I think it's pretty much been 43.5 all week.
Yeah, I look at this and I try to figure out, okay, how does Pittsburgh move the ball? Because we have kind of this pass funnel defense in the Ravens, which you can't run against them at all. And traditionally, it's like, okay, well, we're going to pass against them because that's the weakness of this team. As you mentioned, whether there's some noise there or not, it does look like the pass defense has gotten a little bit better, at least anyway, over the course of the season. And so now you come in against this, like, overall number one run defense basically in the NFL. You got Pittsburgh, who doesn't run the ball efficiently anyway, right? And so now you're doing something you do poorly against something that is the super strength of the defense that you're coming into. So now you're forced into passing. Well, it goes to what you just said. Okay, so we know what Russ and them have to do whenever it comes to the passing game, and they have to get chunk plays in order to be successful, right? Because they're just not a offense that matriculates the ball down the field. It just doesn't happen. They have to have these kind of explosives in order to move the ball and get into scoring position. And so Baltimore does run a lot of man, right? I mean, I think that's like top 7-ish in the league in man coverage. And so Pickens should find himself in some decent one-on-one situations for some of those 50-50 balls. Maybe they work a little bit, I just don't know, Mo. I don't know how often you can do that, right? Like, I just don't know how often. I mean, even if you connect on 3 of those over the course of a game, right? I mean, is that enough when you can't do anything on the ground and you don't really have anybody else in the receiving corps that anybody respects at all, right? Like, that's the thing that I just can't get to here is I'm like, what is the route to the Steelers scoring enough points to keep up with the Ravens doing probably whatever they want to on offense? I mean, certainly they should be able to run against this Steelers run defense, which is really falling off a cliff. So I don't know. What is the path of success here for Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I think it just involves Russ making better decisions.
Yeah.
I mean, he moved the ball the last time these teams played. Like, I had the Ravens in that game, so I watched a bunch of it, and it was Island game, if I'm remembering correctly. So yeah, I just was pretty much watching the whole game. I actually thought the Steelers probably played better than the final score. They definitely moved the ball, but there was, I think there was a fumble on the 10 or something. They had some poor turnovers, and yeah, I think if Russ just needs to take care of the ball and play a bit better, they can move the ball. I still think the secondary is beatable, but yeah, it's not something I'm really looking to bank on.
Yeah.
That's why I'm kind of hesitant on pulling the trigger. And like you said, I also get worried that the Ravens might take the air out of the ball. But on the other hand, Derrick Henry's one of those guys. When you're taking the air out of the ball, he can still take it 60.
Here's the thing. This is what's going to happen. I can tell you exactly. If you don't end up betting the over, I'll tell you exactly what's going to happen. It's going to be 6 points from getting there. And they're going to keep Derrick Henry in the game, even though he should have been out of the game 4 minutes before. And he's going to house 164 yards because that's what he does. And the game's going to get over, and you're going to be like, "See, I knew it."
You mean like he did against the Browns?
Yes. That's what I'm saying. It's just like it's unbelievable. Like, I mean, like, it happens so often with this guy. Going back to the Pickens thing, guys, I just at least want to bring this to your attention with those out there. I mean, if you believe that the Steelers will try to take advantage of this man coverage that the Ravens run a lot of, if you do believe, I know Pickens is as volatile as they come, but the books have basically slotted him as like that volatile dude. It's 53.5 for his yards, right? And so it's like that middling of like, okay, we know at any point this dude can go for 110, but also he could like airball, right? And so like, it's kind of like they put it in that area right there. My only suggestion would be if you're playing the 53.5, play a 70, play a 90, like, because it's like it's either going to work or it's not, and so I would ladder that for sure. He's like the perfect ladder candidate is Pickens, because 5 catches could equal 90 yards for a dude like him, could equal 110 yards for a guy like him, and so that's where I would at least be looking from a prop standpoint in this thing. It's like, all right, you're either in on Pickens or you're out on Pickens. And if you're in on Pickens, just understand that the volatility has him to where he could literally double the output of what the line is set at.
I definitely expect some kind of dead cat bounce here. I mean, how can you not? He embarrassed himself on national TV, and I think he's going to be ready to go for this game. He's a guy who he likes to run his mouth. So guy like that has a performance like that, I would fully expect him to come to play here.
And Mo, just your quick thoughts, last thoughts here on Baltimore. If you're willing to lay the 9, right? Are you willing to lay 12.5? Are you willing to lay 13? Like, are you willing to play some alts as well? Because it's kind of like at that point, you're almost just saying Baltimore is just too much for the Steelers team, right? And if that's the case, couldn't this very well end up being a 17-point game?
Yeah, I have to admit that I'm scared of the voodoo, especially after that first game where I laid 6 or something with the Ravens, or 4. I don't remember what it was, but then they lose outright when they're like plus 3 yards per play or something absolutely absurd. The voodoo scares me, but yeah, the Ravens at home are also very scary. So I think maybe yes. I wouldn't go too crazy here. It's still a Steelers team that has a lot of veterans, has been in this spot before. Not going to crumble, I wouldn't think, in a way that like we've seen some rookie quarterbacks and, you know, a team like the Browns last year that just massively overachieved. I think the Steelers overachieved, but did they overachieve to the point where they're just in a mile over their heads? I don't know. I could still see this being a close game. That's why I still think this line is probably about where it should be.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, guys, as high as 10 out there, as low as 9, so be sure and shop around as always. Denver and Buffalo here in the early game. All 3 games, island games this week, fortunately, so we will be able to take them in their entirety here. Sitting right now, 8.5 to 9 in favor of Buffalo at home over Denver. 47.5 to 48 is our total here, Mo, and this is a Denver team that I'm not going to say got gifted a playoff, but they very well could have won anyway, whatever. But let's just say the Chiefs put out a C-plus effort at best, maybe a D-plus effort at best there against this Denver team. So nothing really to take away from Week 18 for me as far as Denver goes. And then Buffalo ends up kind of pulling the rug out from underneath us and not playing the starters, even though they said they were going to play some starters out there. Anyway, so here we are sitting 8.5 to 9 in favor of Buffalo. Denver coming to town.
Yeah, I made a pretty poor bet in this one, apparently. Major oops for me. I took some under 46.5, minus 105. I'm seeing some low juice 47.5s out there. It was moving my way for a minute. Market apparently thinking there's going to be points here. I still don't think so. Rookie quarterbacks, I mean, look it up. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but we all know they have a horrific record against non-first-time playoff starters. Obviously, this one fits with Bo Nix coming in against Josh Allen. I think Bo Nix, another guy who has thrived in lower pressure, lower leverage games against weak opponents. The Bills have shown they can actually get pressure with 4. So I think this is going to basically be decided up front by that matchup, whether they can beat this very, very strong Denver offensive line. Overall, though, I don't see a very aggressive game plan here from Denver. I imagine Sean Payton is going to try to rein Bo Nix in and keep him from doing anything too crazy. I think we're going to see some running, some shorter passing, some screens, stuff like that. And then on the other side, I don't think that's going to be enough to keep up with the Bills. Once the Bills get a lead, which I anticipate they will, the market anticipates they will, for good reason. They are close to 10-point favorites here. We have seen repeatedly Joe Brady. I know that, like, if you look up like pass rate over expectation, they're actually not that bad. The Bills are like 8th, but they're still minus. So I think maybe we need to change the baseline on whatever expectation is. That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
But I think all of that comes earlier in games, to be honest. I think we've seen them repeatedly take the air out of the ball when they get leads. They have the offensive line to do it. I think the Bills are going to grind the clock in the second half and probably win this pretty comfortably, but I don't see them running up a ton of points here, especially against this Denver secondary. I'm just foreseeing a lot of ground and pound from the Bills. I don't understand why this total is this high. I was surprised it opened at 47.5. I thought that was maybe 2 or 3 points too high, and apparently the market thinks I'm an idiot.
Yeah, 148 at Circa actually out there right now. So this thing's already gotten all the way up to 48. I tend to agree with you for a couple of different reasons too. Like, I don't know exactly how. One, like you said, I do expect Sean Payton to understand what he has in his team, right? Which is, it's still a rookie quarterback on the road in his first playoff game. Like, I don't think we're coming out of the gate bombing 50-yarders to Marvin Mims down the field or whatever, right? Like, I don't think that that's like going to be happening. You know, it puts him in a really tough situation if he doesn't get that going. And then now you're playing even from further behind if you're not moving the chains at all. And so I think a lot of stuff closer to the vest, which is why I was really drawn to this one prop bet. So like Javonte Williams out of the backfield, right? He has the 5th most targets of any running back in the league this year, despite the fact that he still kind of splits time with McLaughlin a little bit. But like, so he's kind of the dude that they're using on these passing downs. And then the Bills do play just so much kind of like safety, too high safety, just, you know, hey, bend but don't break defense and stuff, that they've given up the 2nd most receptions to running backs on the season as well. You can get over 2.5 receptions for Javonte Williams at plus money. Actually, if he can get 3 receptions, you can get plus 105 in this. And I just think the game plan, at least early on, Mo, is like, okay, let's get Bo in a rhythm, and like, let's not try to kill his confidence right off the bat, right? Let's not try to like go out there and do something crazy with him. And so it wouldn't surprise me to see Williams get a catch on the first drive. And then now at that point, you're a super big favorite to get him to 3 catches at some point, especially if they end up trailing in this game. And we're just going to get some dump offs as the defense continues to play this super soft and whatnot. So I played over on Javonte Williams at 2.5 receptions, and then I haven't pulled the trigger yet, but if you're a same game parlay type of guy, I think it's almost correlated to like an under on Cortland Sutton as well, which a guy that sitting about 64.5 in the market right now as far as yardage goes. But like I said, they play a ton of too high, does this Bills team. And when you like Bo Nix, it's just not been near as good against too high. It's one of those things where I think with him and the way his style and the way that he kind of like will get out of the pocket and create and stuff, like man kind of favors him and stuff. So I think you could kind of correlate the two if you're trying to play some same game parlay prop stuff or whatever. But really the only bet in my account here for this one, I did play Javonte Williams over 2.5 receptions at plus money, which I thought was just a really, really good look here considering how I think this game could go in the game plan for Denver.
He's 2nd on the team in targets, if you can believe that. So, yeah, I get it. My fear there would be just basically what you said, which is it's hard to know which of these running backs is going to play at any given time. I mean, it really is a true kind of 3-way timeshare. And I know a lot of coaches are like, oh, well, we're going to go with the hot hand. I think Denver might actually go with the hot hand. Like, they just go with whoever's getting yards. I think that might actually be a thing for Denver. Another one to maybe look out for is I think Bo Nix anytime around plus 400 is probably pretty decent. It's pretty high. I don't expect a ton of points there is my problem. But if you are more confident in this Denver offense than I am, it's like you said, the Bills are going to be pushing back a little bit, playing coverage. I think there's going to be some space, especially if the Bills have a lead. I don't anticipate them being too aggressive here. I think they'll just try to make Denver work their way up the field slowly, and then there could be a rushing lane or two there for Bo Nix. So I don't hate that one either. But, yeah, I just overall expect a decent chance that the Bills kind of dominate Denver. But the line already reflects that.
Yeah, and you know, look, it's if you're looking for just if you're just an action junkie and you're just like looking for action, I mean, The other problem here is if you want to play like the two big favorites, I mean, like even a money line parlay on the Bills and Ravens is still like minus 208, right? It's just like you can't even get a number for a typical bankroll that's palatable in that. So I think if you can't find something that you love in this, I know you want to have action, you want to have stuff like that, put in a $5 same game parlay just to have some juice on the game or something. But like, don't force a bet in this. They're big spreads. There's weird things that could go down. So if you're not in love with a side or the total or something like that, or a prop, don't force it here, because there's other games to bet. And I think there's other bets that I like a little bit better here than this one. So again, sitting at the Bills, 8.5, 9 out there, 47.5-ish in the market as far as that all goes. Just the one prop bet for me on Williams over receptions. Getting that plus money I thought was a little bit too much to pass up here in this one. Green Bay Packers on the road at the Philadelphia Eagles. All the way out to 5.5 at some of the books. Still an expensive 4.5 available out there if you do some shopping around here in favor of the Eagles at home over Green Bay. 45.5 to 46 is our total. Mo, this opened 3.5. It was the first bet I put into my account. I fired the 3.5 in there on Philadelphia. I like the rest angle here for them. I like the fact that Jordan Love is banged up. I like the fact that Christian Watson's not going to be out there for Green Bay. I just like a whole lot about Philadelphia in this game. I think this defense is, if not the best defense in the NFL, certainly inside the top 5 as far as well-rounded units. Hard to run against, hard to pass against, all kinds of things here that they can bring you from a look standpoint. And maybe I'm buying into the Kool-Aid a little bit, but I actually, even on one of my shows, talked to a doctor this week, and they were talking about this ulnar nerve thing in Jordan Love's elbow. And the problem is where that really can affect you too, not just in the elbow, but it runs all the way to your pinky. And so obviously your pinky, like the last point of contact with the ball as you're throwing the ball. They were talking about historically, they have seen guys that have had trouble with accuracy with this injury before, if they hadn't given it a few weeks to rest, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Take from that what you will. We don't know the extent of the injury here for Jordan Love, but it was more fuel for the fire for me anyway to come in and take the 3.5 on Philadelphia. Now I understand that that's not available anymore. You can find a 4.5. The difference between 3.5 and 4.5, it's a difference. It's not like, 4 probably, since we've gone to the whole getting 2-point conversion happy and all that, I'm sure it has hit way more, whatever, and we'll get all that data, but would still probably lay the 4.5 and feel fairly comfortable with it in all of this. What say you?
Well, I hope you're wrong, because I still have my Green Bay futures holding the bag a bit with the path they wound up with. Mm-hmm. Now the line is longer than it was when I bet on it multiple weeks ago, even though at that point it wasn't even certain that they would be in the playoffs, I don't think. But listen, I think there's big concerns for both sides. I think on the Eagles side, I'd be very concerned as an Eagles backer about Jalen Hurts' concussion recovery. We have seen quarterbacks. I think you can probably find this if you just start Googling around, but the record of quarterbacks coming back from a concussion is pretty poor. They have often played not close to their best. I don't think Jalen Hurts is a talented enough player to where if he's not close to his best, the Eagles are going to be in good shape. I think they'd be actually in pretty big trouble. And I'm also worried how that may affect their strategies as far as like going for the bush push, stuff like that. We know how effective those plays can be. I don't know if that's even in play this week. So we'll see what they decide to do there. Obviously, they have a very good running back, so maybe they don't need it. But on the other side, you have Jair Alexander being out. That's big. Facing some very strong receivers here, obviously. On the other hand, A.J. Brown is less than 100%. I mean, there's a lot of stuff here. My biggest fear on the Green Bay side of things is the matchup between the quarterback and the defensive coordinator. You have Jordan Love, who likes to be aggressive, likes to trust his arm, likes to push the ball downfield. I think he was 4th in ADOT this year. So we know he wants to get after it. And you have a Vic Fangio defense that thrives on preying on quarterbacks who are overly aggressive. We know how you need to attack this defense. You need to run the ball. You need to throw short. You need to be patient. That is a lesson that took 2 years to sink in for Patrick Mahomes, and now he is eating against these defenses, but it takes some time for quarterbacks to settle into that when they're used to making big plays constantly. So I don't like that matchup. I'm worried Jordan Love is going to be forcing some throws here in spots where he shouldn't be. I do trust this Green Bay staff. It's a great offensive staff. They should, in theory, be prepping all this stuff, but once you get on the field and the bullets start flying and you're Jordan Love and you throw off platform constantly and you've had the success you've had, I think that creates a false sense of security a bit in a spot like this where you do need to be patient and you do need to take what the defense gives you.
Yeah, I guess I look at this and I don't see any advantage at all outside of the coaching staff, really, which, again, yes, that's huge, but when there is a player, let's just talk about strictly on the field stuff. Like, would I probably take Jordan Love over Jalen Hurts, all things created equal? Yeah, but, like, he's injured, and so it's like, so, okay, let's call that a push, in my opinion. You're taking Saquon Barkley over Josh Jacobs. You're taking any receiver over any receiver that Green Bay has. You're certainly taking this defense over anything that Green Bay's putting out there on the defensive side. I don't – it's hard for me to find that thing, right, where I can go, and then you're down a receiver as well. Like, yeah, there's just like a lot of things here. You're down your best corner that leads me towards the Eagles kind of here in this one a decent amount. Now, what I will say is the Eagles, if there is a path that maybe you could hide Love, if he isn't quite 100% there with that elbow and stuff, is the fact that the Eagles run light boxes at the highest rate in the league. And so you might just pound Jacobs like as much as humanly possible to begin this game and see if that works and see if they have to then make an adjustment on their end, which could create some stuff for Jordan Love. So, I mean, I think there's some creative ways to maybe attack this Eagles team and see if it works. And then if it does, then maybe you find some success somewhere along the way. I do think that Jacobs gets fed early here to see just how effective he can be against, again, a defense that just doesn't ever like to really stack the box. They just kind of like, all right, we're gonna have our dudes up there that are big, and if they can stop you, then they'll stop you, and if not, then we'll deal with it on the second level. So I do kind of have that worry, at least a little bit, that Jacobs might actually be able to feast at least early on, and then see how this plays out if the Eagles do get in a deficit and Hurts isn't 100%. But that's kind of like the one scenario that I have that could lean towards the Packers, where I have like 6 or 7 other ones that kind of lean towards the Eagles, which I typically will always go that direction if it's outweighed that much for me. I'm not all that worried about Hurts, and maybe I should be, considering what you just said. It was like he was ready to go right back in the game, and then they were like, no, you've got to like come off and all that stuff. Like, he didn't even think he was concussed and all that. And so I don't know. I mean, he wouldn't have played last week anyway because they rested all their starters. So it doesn't really, like, that doesn't concern me either because he wouldn't have played last week anyway. So I don't know. Are you worried at all about, because it'll come up, right? I mean, it's going to come up between now and kicker. Like, are you worried at all about rust? Like, with them not having the dudes out there for a while?
Not really that, but yeah, I guess it just makes me wonder what you said. Did they even try to push him through concussion protocol the prior week? I don't know, because they're just saying now that he cleared the protocol today, I think. I don't know if that's a factor of they didn't care. They didn't even care for him to try to clear it because they were always resting him, or he wasn't clearing it last week, which that happens with concussions pretty frequently. So, I don't know what that means, and that's why there's just a lot of unknowns in this game, and I don't have a bet in this game. My concerns about both offenses do make me lean a bit to the under, as crazy as that seems, with kind of a middling number. Yeah. Two very good offense. But, like, Green Bay was still 7th in defensive DVOA this year. Eagles were 1st. I mean, these are two very strong defenses. And like I said, I agree with you. I think Jacobs is going to be getting the ball a lot early. They have the offensive line to try to do it. So both sides do. Both sides have the offensive line to take the ball out of the quarterback's hands, which I think is probably best on both sides. I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you these are awful quarterbacks or anything, but
Yeah.
I don't trust Jalen Hurts in must-pass situations for sure. And like I said, Jordan Love is in a spot where I don't like the matchup with the opposing defensive scheme. So I think both teams should be looking to run the ball.
The full game rush attempts for Josh Jacobs is sitting 16.5. You know, I understand that, I guess in theory it could get into a game state that they have to just pass a lot. I don't think this is a blowout type game, so I don't think that gets there. It would surprise me. I think it would be, I'll put it this way, Mo. I think that the offense would be doing it wrong if they get to halftime and he doesn't at least have 10 carries, right? You know what I'm saying? So then you're only asking for 7 in the second half. Like, I think you probably didn't go about this the right way if you didn't look and say, okay, they're really only trying to stop the run with the front four. Like, that's like basically how they play. They're okay with what they have on the back. Like, I think you go with that until it's proven that you can't go with it. So, I mean, I'm a little bit drawn to over there. You got to get to 17 carries. I think, again, it would be a tragedy if they did not have 10 or 11 with him by halftime in this. And so that's at least a prop that, again, if you're playing SGPs or something, right, like maybe you could throw in that kind of tells the story of how you think that this game might play out.
And we know what's going to happen when they get in the red zone.
Yeah.
That guy is a touch hog in the red zone. So I kind of like his anytime touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
I think there were some pluses out there. I don't know if they're still available, but I think that's not right. He should probably still be minus, even in a spot where I don't expect a ton of offense.
Yeah.
He just gets the ball constantly in the red zone, and he makes it happen. He scored like 10 straight games or something absurd, I think. I looked at his game log.
Yeah, I think that's a good look as well. And again, certainly something that if you're putting together an SGP or something like that you could make as part of your storytelling when it's all said and done. It is the Washington Commanders on the road at the Tampa Bay Bucks. Matt Brown, Mo Nuwwarah coming to you here. It is a 3-point spread in favor of Tampa at home. 50 to 50.5 is our total here in this one. Mo, we saw Tampa struggle in week 18 to get it done before finally kind of pulling away there at the end. But all in all, did get it done, did go ahead and move on here. Despite what you think about that offensive performance, doesn't really matter. Here they are hosting Washington as 3-point favorites.
Yeah. Week 1 rematch. That game, the Bucs offense kind of set the tone for their whole season. They had their way, and pass offense never really stopped rolling. And I kind of think that's going to happen again here. But, man, I don't know how Tampa Bay is going to get stops either. So I think this is a rightfully very high total. Tampa Bay secondary is really bad. They have not been able to cover anybody. You have a Washington defense, 23rd overall in DVOA. The only thing they can really do is pressure the quarterback. They like to blitz. The Bucs do have a good O-line, though. I think the biggest thing I'm excited for in this game is that we get another round of Marshawn Lattimore versus Mike Evans. And that leads me to a prop that I really like in this game, which is Jalen McMillan anytime. I have been hammering this for weeks and weeks. They keep putting him close to plus 200. I mean, they finally brought him down to like plus 140 last week. And then this game has a total of 50, and they go back up to plus 160 when Mike Evans is up against a guy who has kind of eaten his lunch his whole career. So I don't know why Jalen McMillan anytime is still plus 160. He's got 5 straight games with touchdowns, 7 scores overall in that time. And that's basically the time where he took over as WR2. And, before that, I think it was the Raiders game. He had less than 4 targets per game. He's getting 6, 7 targets basically every game. I know Cade Otton is back. That hurts his outlook a bit, so that might be why the price went back up. I still think Jalen McMillan anytime. You can get plus 160, plus 150. I think these are fine, and they're good plays, I think, because I don't expect a lot of defense in this game.
Yeah, again, I keep getting drawn to these like rush attempt deals whenever I just think that there's such a glaring way that an offense should at least try at first, which is you get this Commanders defense that is dead last in the NFL in yards before contact allowed, right? And you have Bucky Irving that has like morphed into one of the few basically bell cow backs in the NFL. I mean, yeah, Rachaad White comes in for like a handful of downs a game now, but like, I mean, this is like Bucky Irving's backfield for sure. And if you're the Bucs and you can just continually move the ball at 5 yards a clip, like handing the ball off to Bucky Irving, I don't know. Again, he's at 16.5 as well. You got to get to 17 touches for him, 17 rush attempts for him against a Washington defense that can't stop like a nosebleed on the ground. And so, I don't know, path of least resistance type of stuff always draws me to things like this, but this one I've not put in the account yet, but at least something to kind of bring up. The other thing, I guess, if we're talking points here, Mo, and we want to like at least, try to give both sides of all this. So Jaden Daniels, despite being a rookie, was just unbelievably awesome against zone defense all season long. If you look at PFF's grades, he was the 4th highest graded quarterback in the entire NFL against zone coverage over the course of the 2024 season. And the Bucs run the highest rated zone coverage there is in the NFL as well. And so you kind of see, like you're talking about, as far as like, where do these defenses get stops? Like what's going on here? I mean, like, I think the Bucs can run it down the throat of Washington. And I think if you turn around, unless the Bucs make a drastic change in how their defensive philosophy, which again is a ton of zone, then Jaden Daniels getting top 5 in the NFL as far as passing against zone coverage. So I do wonder if, like you said, I mean, I know it's a high total, but I don't know. This thing might like just be a complete and utter shootout.
Oh, yeah, I could absolutely see that. I mean, I think I read you could get point totals around 60, around plus 300 range. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's that crazy.
Yeah,
I mean, there's 57 last time these two teams played. That was before we knew what Jaden Daniels was.
Yeah.
He kind of was scoring in garbage time, if I remember right. Mm-hmm. I think they were down pretty big in that game. But, yeah, I mean, I'd play a lot of zone, too, if my corners couldn't cover anybody. Yeah. So I completely understand what the Bucs are doing, but I just don't see them getting far in the playoffs really with the secondary like this. It's just I don't know. These guys just can't cover anybody, and then I don't trust this Washington defense at all. I haven't trusted them all year. I think the coaching staff did a good job. I mean, I think we've talked about that before. I think they did a good job. They don't have the talent.
Yeah.
They had bottom 5 talent, I think, and they wound up, only bottom 10-ish. So I think the coaching staff got better results than the talent dictated, but I still think you are facing a high volume, very threatening offense. These are just two dangerous, threatening passing offenses, and playing in great conditions, 55-degree weather in Florida, it's just hard to see too much defense being played in this game.
I wish you could we should mention, so Marshawn Lattimore is going to be a full go in this game. So he's making, his 3rd return now of the season. I wish you could bet on over under pass interference yards, because like he's going to interfere with Mike Evans 3 times in this game would be my guess, like minimum. So like I like weirdly want to play under 76.5 Mike Evans yards, not because I don't think he's going to play a big role in this game, but because I just don't think he's going to get the opportunity to catch some of the balls. Like I think Lattimore is kind of this savvy veteran that when he gets beat, he'll just like interfere, because he's like, okay, yeah, I give up this amount of yardage, but it's not like he catches it and runs it for another 15 or 20 or to the end zone or whatever. And so like, he has never met a PI that he didn't like. And so I think that there's at least that factor as well here on Evans, that it's not that I don't believe in Evans. I just don't believe Evans might have all the opportunities to go at it.
Yeah, I like that quite a bit. I think I'll probably play that. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize his total was that high. I mean, given the matchup, like I said, he has struggled a lot against Lattimore. Mm-hmm. I guess my fear there would be if you are not 100%, the place that it might pop up, like say your hamstring is keeping you from, 100% of your max speed, you're at like 95. maybe he gets burned on a deep ball and Evans gets it all in one chunk, but I don't anticipate a ton of success for Evans.
Yeah, that's a risk I'm willing to take there in that one for sure. Again, sitting at 3 right now in favor of Tampa at home. 50.5 is our total here. Both Mo and I think there should be some points here in this game. So it should be a fun one to watch, the nightcap here on Sunday. The final game of Wildcard weekend, Monday night, Minnesota Vikings and the LA Rams. I would have said Vikings on the road at the LA Rams, but this game has been moved over to Glendale, Arizona. Hearts and thoughts and prayers and all the stuff, whatever you guys do for good juju and everything for all the guys over in California. Just absolutely brutal, heartbreaking stuff to see over there. And so the Rams have to move this game that would have been a home game. They earned a home game under the current playoff system over to a neutral field in Arizona. So with that, the line, Mo, moves from about 1 in favor of the Vikings out to 2.5 in favor of the Vikings. We've actually seen a couple of 3s now pop at Fanatics and ESPN bet. 47.5 to 48 is our total. So we now know home field advantage for the Rams is worth a point, maybe a 1.5 essentially, because that's what this line moves. It was sitting about 1.5. It moves over and sitting there at 2.5 as we sit right now. What say you here, Vikings and Rams?
Yeah, this is a really interesting one. I'm super curious what happens with this line if there's any further movement, because somebody was pounding the Rams who had a lot of market influence. I mean, they moved from I even saw some Rams -1s when they were +2.5 at open. Mm-hmm. So someone with market influence loved the Rams. They were all in on the Rams. Obviously, those bets all get voided. I'm very curious to see what happens with this line. I think it's curious and interesting and kind of odd. The Vikes open -2.5 on a neutral when they were -2.5 in LA to start.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, Mo, and I know we're doing this like hypothetical deal and whatever. And so I actually played a Vikings one and I played it at MGM, so it got voided. By the way, tickets at DraftKings and FanDuel are all good, so you guys don't have to worry about those. MGM, Caesars voided out those tickets and whatnot. And the reason for me is I kind of looked at it like this, and you answer me this question, maybe I was just off. So let's say the Vikings didn't get owned by the Lions, and let's say that the Lions just kicked a walk-off field goal as opposed to kind of dominating the majority of that second half against this Vikings team, and that kind of was the lasting memory of the last time we saw the Vikings team. What does this open up? Doesn't this open at 2.5, 3 or something? Is it really 1.5? I don't know. I felt like maybe the Vikings were getting a tiny bit of disrespect off of that marquee last game of the year. Everybody's watching it, whatever. And that's the last taste in our mouth of that Vikings team, which was kind of laying an egg against, what might end up being the best team in the NFL when it's all said and done. The Lions might win the Super Bowl for all we know. So I don't know. I thought maybe there was a tiny bit of overreaction.
Yeah, I have that exact thing in my notes. I'm with you. I think the Vikes are a better team. I think there's probably some buy low here after, like you said, a poor national TV performance. Darnold should bounce back. We saw him miss multiple throws. We know this is a much weaker Rams defense than what the Lions have trotted out there. At least if you look at the season-long numbers. I don't know if that's true. It's hard to say at this point. But, yeah, overall, statistically, Lions much better than the Rams. I would expect Darnold to play better. I'm just holding my Rams future ticket and praying there's something to that, but I am with you on that. I do think the Rams legitimately kicked their asses last time these teams played. Mm-hmm. So they dominated the Vikes. I don't know if that was Lions hangover and that was just like a no-show or what the deal was there. I think this might be a live betting game for me, or I would recommend it because I really think this game boils down to just one thing, and that's, are the Vikings blitzes getting home? Mm-hmm. We know what Brian Flores wants to do. We know they have had success more often than not. Matt Stafford cannot move anymore. We have seen that the last 2 years. For fun, I looked up Matt Stafford's PFF rating when kept clean versus under pressure. I didn't even know the grades went this low. He has a 29.4. I had to triple check to make sure that I had the right sample size, and I wasn't looking at like one game or something.
Right.
He has a 29.4 grade under pressure and a 92 grade clean.
Yeah.
I think that generally matches up with what we've been seeing with Stafford the last 2 years, which is he can't deal with any bad pockets and he can't run anymore. So if he can plant his feet and fire, yeah, he's probably in decent shape. But I thought that was basically I liked the Vikes in the previous matchup. I don't even remember if I bet it or not, but I remember leaning that way, and I was stunned that they were able to hold off these blitzes. So I don't know if they're going to be able to do that again. I'm very, very fascinated to see. But I think if you just watch the first few drives and you're like, okay, they're picking up all these blitzes, Stafford has the throws that he wants. Even if the Rams are up 10-7 or something, if it's like Rams minus 1.5, I think that might be okay at that point.
I look at one of the things that I'm going to kind of see here, and if I know this stat, then certainly Brian Flores knows this stat. It's so Stafford, when blitzed this year, has thrown to Puka Nacua on 45% of the throws. Like nearly half of the throws when he's been blitzed, he's thrown to Puka Nacua. So it's just like, oh my God, here comes an extra guy, and he's just throwing to Puka Nacua. Like, I mean, it's like auto, right? Brian, if I know this and Brian Flores knows this, like, is this a deal where Brian Flores is like, we're going to bring the heat, but we're going to try to take away Nacua when we bring the heat and make him like do something that he doesn't want to do? And then in that situation, Mo, now you have a guy who's bad anyway under this, and now you're taking away the one thing he really wants to do, and now he's freaking out. It's like, oh no, now I've got to go elsewhere with all of this. I do wonder with that. So that's something I'm going to kind of try to watch early on as well, because if he's not able to get the ball out and get the ball out quick to Nacua, then it might be a really long day for Stafford in this Rams team. I like the Vikings anyway. I mean, like, I'm just more saying this as if I end up wanting to pile on somewhere along the game. Like I said, I bet the 1, it got voided. I came back and bet a 2. There was a 2 here in town until it got to 2.5. I bet the 2, so I have 1 point less, than I had on the original bet. But overall, to me, I guessed this at 3. Like, I guessed this line at 3 whenever I was kind of like figuring out what I thought this was going to open at. And so when it opened less than that, I obviously, with 3 being the keyest of key numbers, I found a lot of value on that. And I just can't help but think that if the Lions walk it off with a 37-yard field goal and they win the North and they get the number 1 seed, but it's like, oh, the Vikings were right there to the end, that this wouldn't have opened at a field goal. I don't know. I mean, I can't say it for certain. No one can say it for certain. I think that the difference in most people's power ratings between the Vikings and the Rams would have put this closer to a field goal than it was. So that's why I ended up where I ended up. I don't know. And let's talk about this. And we're not being heartless bastards here, but let's talk about this. Do you take into account at all that these people's lives have been messed up, right, for the last week, and that whether it's their home or not, certainly it's someone they know, it's whatever, it's the state that they reside in at least half the year and all of this stuff. Like, I know it's hard to handicap emotion and all of that, but I also do find it hard to believe that you've been able to keep your mind 100% on the task at hand when something like this, as devastating as this, is going on.
Yeah, you always wonder, but then, I mean, that sort of thing can help motivate you as well. So, you never know. My understanding from talking to Rich, our buddy, who, is over in California, he's saying none of this area that they live in or practice in or anything was remotely affected really by any of this. So maybe it's something close to out of sight, out of mind. I don't know how dialed in these guys are to whatever's happening. Yeah. So it's really hard to say, like you said.
Yeah.
But overall, really weird situation, obviously playing in a neutral venue. Could see a lot of Vikings fans there. Maybe even more Vikings fans. I mean,
oh, I think so for sure. Yeah. Like,
yeah,
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me to see this be like more Vikings fans than Rams fans because
less travel.
Yeah. Yeah. And they were like, again, this is like, this is a sports betting podcast that we're doing. So I don't want anyone to think that like I'm talking out of line here and all this. I am bringing up the facts here, which is it's pretty hard to justify like going to a football game when you're dealing with all, you know what I'm saying? Like all of this other stuff that's like going on. And so I don't know how well the Rams are really going to travel here from a fan perspective. So it would not surprise me at all to see this feel like a Vikings, kind of like a Vikings majority crowd in this one, because for them, it's as easy as switching a flight for the ones that were already coming. And then the ones that maybe this is like a reason for more people to come, whatever. It's Phoenix. I can go play golf or so, I don't know. So it wouldn't surprise me to see this be like a lot of purple in the stands.
Yeah, that's probably more likely. So maybe this line should have moved more than it did based on where it was. I don't know. I don't know what the reasoning was behind the Rams' love initially. I'm hoping it's right. Like I said, still holding a 30-1 NFC ticket. Not feeling great about it, but hey, I mean, they're still basically in a coin flip first round, so I can't be too mad.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I look at this one, that 47.5, somewhat interesting. Like you said, I think we see a much, much better performance from this Vikings offense. And if the blitz doesn't get home, I'll put it this way: it's not in the account. I would lean toward. I'd rather go over here than I would go under. I think Minnesota has every bit of a chance to put up mid to high 20s, given that I think the offense certainly rebounds here against a worse defense in the Rams. And then, like you mentioned, if the blitz is not getting home, then Stafford should be able to move the ball too on this team. So it's more over than under for me. What would be a lean for you from a total standpoint?
The same. Yeah. I was tempted to pull the trigger on the over here at 47.5. But yeah, my fears are just basically around how poor the Rams offense has. The passing game has not been good for. They've had one good game in like 6 weeks. Yeah. I mean, it hasn't been a good run for this offense. So I'm just being scared off by how they've looked. But everything in theory is telling me this number should be like 50. But yeah, it's still a very good Vikings defense. So maybe they can control the game that way as well.
Guys, everything we do, absolutely free. So please go ahead, hit that subscribe button. Do appreciate the support, helping us if you're on the audio side, climb up the charts here over on the video side, helping us get some more love there in the YouTube algorithm. That's all we ask is hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and everything else we do is absolutely free. Also, absolutely free is the Discord channel. Head to TheLines.com, upper right-hand corner. That is absolutely free as well, discussing this game and all things in the sports world over there in the Discord as well. For Mo, I am Matt. Good luck on all your Vikings and Rams bets.